I've been known to get defensive from time to time here on YouTube, but the Texans were getting defensive with some of their interviews here at the NFL Scouting Combine. Let's talk about it live here on YouTube. Welcome into the channel. I'm Cody Stoots. Let's talk some Texans. Let's talk about the NFL Scouting Combine live from the beautiful Indiana Convention Center here in Indianapolis, Indiana, for the 2025 NFL Scouting Combine. Defensive tackles, linebackers, and defensive ends talk today. And there were some really interesting standout moments that I'll recap for you here from the conversations I was able to have with some of these prospects. And just to kind of give you an understanding, a lay of the land, they bring out these prospects like 8, 9 at a time. Sometimes when it was the defensive tackles, they bring out like 12 guys at once. You just go around to your different podiums. You try to talk to them. There's a ton of people here trying to get great information. And I'm trying to get great information, trying to find out which ones of these guys have talked to the Houston Texans. That's the most important thing to me, because if the Texans use a top 40, I say top 40. I don't like that phrase. I need to rephrase it. They use a 40 visit, a 30 visit, whatever it is, one of their visits here at the Combine on a player. There's a very specific reason why they did that. They want to find out more about that player. They want to learn more about that player. I'm going to go through a couple of the names that I talked to, tell you some of the things I learned about those guys. And the one at the end, man, the one at the end, you're going to want to stick around for that one. So Cases KK says, hey, interview Jamari Caldwell, defensive tackle from Oregon. He actually didn't make it to the podium. See, sometimes the medicals for these guys, the timing of it throws them off. So a lot of guys that I wanted to talk to, TJ Sanders from North Carolina, Caldwell from Oregon, his teammate Harmon from Oregon. They didn't make it to the podium, or they didn't make it to the podium when I was there. But guys that did make it to the podium, I talked to them and I tried to get as much as I could about the Houston Texans, what they thought, the conversations with them, and then I wanted to bring it to you. So we'll go through, I think it's about 12 guys. Some of them I have a little bit more than others on exactly what they want to talk about, what they talked about, and how they talked to the Houston Texans. And let's start with the defensive tackle. Let's start with the big fellas, and let's start with Texas defensive tackle Alfred Collins. Collins was a super intriguing prospect heading into the scouting combine, because there's some Michigan guys that are just monsters that are going to be really highly thought of and focused on in the first round. And we're going to talk about one of them here in just a moment. But Collins is a guy that talked to him today, and I'm listening to him talk, and he says, yeah, I came to the combine, and I'm going to come here, and I'm going to prove that I'm the best defensive tackle in the nation. And I was like, okay, I love that, because these two Michigan cats, Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant, they're widely regarded as the top two defensive tackles. But Alfred Collins says, yeah, no, I'm going to come here and I'm going to prove that I am the top defensive tackle in the nation. And as I read a little bit more about Collins, as I learn a little bit more about Alfred Collins, I don't know that he's going to be the top defensive tackle in the nation. I don't know that he's going to be a first-round pick. He's probably going to end up as a second-round pick, because I believe he's going to test well. I believe he's going to interview well. The tape is there with the success that he had at the University of Texas. And then I wanted to know, hey, Alfred Collins, did you talk to the Houston Texans? And he said, yep, I talked to the Texans. Now, some of these guys, they tell you a lot about the interview. Some of these guys just say, oh, yeah, I talked to him. Some of these guys say, oh, no, I talked to everybody, or I'm talking to everyone. But Alfred Collins, did you talk to the Texans? Yep. And somebody had asked him, hey, did you talk to the Cowboys? I don't remember what he said, but would you like to stay in Texas? He's like, yep. It's like, all right. Man, a few words, but he wants to prove he's one of the best defensive tackles in the country. And Alfred Collins, to me, feels like a really intriguing second-round pick for the Texans. And if he got to the third-round pick where the Texans are picking, that would be a steal. It feels like when you read about Collins, when you understand what he brings to the table as a defensive tackle, it feels like it'd be a pretty intriguing player and a steal maybe of a player. Collins is a fun one to think about for the Texans. Probably needs to be the second rounder if you want a really good shot at him. If he ends up in the third round, this is the type of player that DeMeco Ryans could draw everything out of this guy. He's going to be a guy that's going to need to grow into his potential. He's not going to immediately right away be a really big game changer for you. He's going to need to grow in to his potential, and he can do it. If he ended up as the second round pick for the Texans, or my goodness, if he dropped to the third round, I'm probably too low on him thinking that he's going to get to the third round. But Jake Asman with a super chat. I appreciate him. He's right across from me here at the NFL Scouting Combine doing his show live. He's super chatting me. He's a multitasker, very talented, good friend of mine, a roommate this week. So I appreciate it. So we go from Alfred Collins, the big fella from Texas, to a first-round big fella, a guaranteed first-round big fella, Kenneth Grant. Look at this mountain of a man. And I loved hearing Kenneth Grant talk about what he brought to the table as a defensive tackle. He's like, I just stopped the run. It's a mentality. I got pass rush moves. People don't think I got pass rush moves. I got pass rush moves. And the thing about Kenneth Grant, the Michigan defensive tackle, when you think about him and when you understand what he has right now, he was a super productive player for Michigan in his initial stint with the Wolverines. And you think about the potential there and how he can sort of grow into it and ramp up into it. He's a guy that's got the ability of like Chris Collinsworth. Now, here's a guy. What I see with Kenneth Grant and what I understand from the draft nicks, he comes in right away. He helps your run defense. As he continues to develop and as he fine-tunes his body, he talked about losing a little bit of weight as well. As he continues to develop and fine-tune, he's got some pass rush upside to the equation. So he's a guy that primarily will help you with some run stop. He's got some pass rush upside, and I loved his mentality. I loved the way that he was, very laid back, cool. He knew that he is a big-time prospect that's got top of the teens potential, or end up on a good team and becomes a plug-and-play piece for a good team. But the big thing you think about with these prospects, especially guys that are top 3 rounds, even top 4 rounds, with the way that the Texans have their roster built right now, do you foresee a role for them right away? Like, can you draft these guys in the top 4 rounds and see a role for them right away? And the Texans, I feel like, do kind of have that emphasis in the way that they think about draft prospects. Obviously, I see one with Kenneth Grant. You plop him down there in the middle. He slows things down for opposing rushing offenses. It's incredible. It's incredible. Like, you see the fit right away. Some of these other guys, maybe you don't see the fit right away, or maybe it's a rotational fit, or it's like Blake Fisher last year. It's a backup, break glass in case of emergency fit. But Kenneth Grant, super impressive and big guy. You could see it right here. Just a big human being. Okay. I can't wait to see him work out, because I bet he is going to absolutely crush for the big fellas. Let's go to another defensive tackle. We're talking about the defensive tackles. We'll get to the linebackers here in just a moment, and we'll finish up with defensive ends. You want to stick around for the final defensive end here. Jordan Phillips was my second favorite conversation of the day. Now, the Texans haven't talked to Jordan Phillips yet, but interviews continue today. Interviews continue throughout the rest of the week. Jordan Phillips hasn't talked to the Texans yet. Jordan Phillips is a run stuffer from Maryland. And if the name sounds familiar, there's already a defensive tackle in the NFL who is named Jordan Phillips. He plays for the Buffalo Bills. And Jordan Phillips was laughing when he was asked about this. He's like, yeah, I followed him. I know exactly about him. Like, people don't confuse us, but it's a funny aspect that we're both Jordan Phillips, we're both defensive tackles. Jordan Phillips was my second favorite conversation of the day. Listening to him talk about being a good teammate and how he has to take care of his business. And if he wants to be a leader, he has to be good at what he does, and he has to study, and he has to understand the ins and the outs of everything about a defensive line, because he's played from the zero technique all the way out to wide 9 defensive end. He believes he has more pass rush ability than what he has showcased. He believes he can play defensive end. He believes he can play all up and down the line. He said he studies interior offensive linemen. He studies tackles. He wants to be a better pass rusher. I loved that conversation. But the one I really liked, he's talking about being a leader. And he talked about being a leader, and he said that being a leader is being unique to your teammates, in that you have to know how your teammate wants to be led. He said there's guys that I get in their face, I scream, I yell, they dial in, they lock in. And there's other guys that, as I approach them, I know that's not going to work with them. And so I have to say, hey, man, like, you're better than this. We can do this. It's kind of a camaraderie thing. And I love that comment because this is he's going to be 20 years old when he's drafted. He's going to be 20 years old. There's a 20-year-old who's played some college football and understands that you cannot lead everyone the same way. And he comes off extremely football junkie and savvy about what is necessary to succeed at defensive tackle. Now, he, again, a little bit on the smaller side, primarily a defensive tackle from a run stopper standpoint, but as a guy that, like, hey, there's a little bit of potential, draw him out. What's the role right away for him, Cody? Well, the role right away for him is he comes in on first and second down and he helps stop the opposing rushing attack. That's the role for him right away. He's a really impressive young man. If you catch any clips of him around social media or YouTube, it's worth taking some time to watch. Jordan Phillips, really fun conversation. This is the best picture I took all day. Waya Black. Waya Black is how you say his name. Waya Black. And he hasn't talked to the Texans. I believe he talked to them at the Senior Bowl. I have to expect that he did talk with them. Run stuffer at defensive tackle, but's got some pass rush prowess. And the way he talked about his approach to football is a very, like, fun, jovial, I want to take care of business. I want to have some fun. I want to pass rush. He was pretty darn good at the Senior Bowl. He beat up on some interior offensive linemen at the Senior Bowl when he was there. And he talked about, he said, I think people forget I'm a big guy. He's like, I'm one of the bigger guys here at defensive tackle in the combine and in this draft. And there's not a lot of big guys at this position. And so Waya Black, he was a fun conversation, just great personality, just sort of magnetic. And then one of his teammates was talking about him, and his name escapes me right now, but I will pull it up. One of his teammates was talking about him, and it was his teammate who plays linebacker, and I'm finding the name right now so that I don't botch it, don't mess it up. Oh, come on, Cody. I have it all written down, and then I don't have it written down. His teammate was talking about him, Jay Higgins, Iowa linebacker, who I also really enjoyed the conversation. Jay Higgins talking about him. He says, Waya Black knows everything about the defense. He's super smart. He knows the defense like a linebacker. Like, he knew my calls from the defensive tackle spot. And I was like, oh my God, that's pretty impressive. And then when we asked Waya Black about it, he goes, nah, I can't do all that. I can't do the green dot and all that kind of stuff. And I can't communicate with the defense like that. Like, I'm not gonna do that. It made me laugh. Waya Black, great conversation, and probably the best picture that I took all day long. Now you're saying to yourself, with 13 minutes in here, Cody, where's the offensive guys? Where are they talking to these offensive guys? Look, offense tomorrow with the tight ends, and Friday with running backs and wide receivers, and Saturday with offensive linemen. You're going to get your fill of offense. But the defensive guys talked right now, and that's who we're talking about right now. So those are the defensive tackles that I talked to. We'll get to some defensive ends here in just a moment. And let me get some back end here filled up so I can make sure that I have it squared away for us. So we can make this little seamless transition as I fill for time. Let's talk about some linebackers here. UCLA linebacker Carson Schlesinger. Elite hair. Look at this hair. Look at the body. Look at the waviness, the curls in the back. Just an absolutely incredible head of hair. And I have no idea if that makes him a little bit better prospect in my eyes or a little bit worse prospect in D'Amico Ryan's noted bald guy's eyes. Schlesinger took the approach of, I meet with a lot of teams, so he did not say that he did or didn't meet with the Houston Texans, and he gave that answer with everything. He's, I met with a lot of teams. That was every time he talked about a team. I love this guy's story. Walk on, becomes a core 4 special teamer, so he plays on all the special teams units, gets added to the scholarship situation via special teams, and then turns into one of the best linebacker prospects in the upcoming NFL draft. So a lot of people believe that Jahad Campbell from Alabama is the best linebacker prospect. Schwessinger's number 2. At 59, I believe is what the Texans have. At 58 right now. Probably don't need a linebacker, but it's not a bad investment with Azeez Al-Shire eventually leaving, Henry To'oTo'o. Going to have 2 more years on his contract before you have to think about extending him. And then Christian Harris, he's coming up on the last year of his contract. I wouldn't primarily go for this. And really, I wanted to put this picture up because of the immaculate hair. But Schlesinger, probably not a Texans target because of where he's going to go, kind of high. But I am intrigued to see where he goes and if he keeps the immaculate flow into the conversation. Ohio State linebacker Cody Simon. I got really nothing for you on Cody Simon. I have to do some more digging on him. But I was fascinated as I was waiting for another prospect, and I heard Cody Simon talking. He goes up to the podium, and the very first 5-6 questions were all about Ohio State's losing streak to Michigan. And I was just like, oh, my God, what are we doing here? Just asking the kid, just bam, 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 question after question after question after question about the losing streak to Michigan. And he's answering all the questions. He's like, yeah, those guys are going to be ready. They think about it every day. I think about it every day. And I was like, God, poor kid. No idea if Cody Simon's on the Texans board or he's on the Texans radar or if he talked to him. I was just fascinated as I was waiting for another prospect to listen to another prospect that they're just like, Michigan, 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 Michigan. And I was like, the game is different. The game is different. A couple of comments here. David likes a linebacker in the 4th. That'd be a great spot for it. Or if they had an additional day 2 pick, the 3rd round, late 2nd round, I'd be okay with it. Primetime Vari says, like Danny Stuntsman, that's the Oklahoma linebacker. Surprisingly, did not talk to the Texans. Again, interviews continue, but he hadn't talked to the Texans yet. Stuntsman grew up a Cowboys fan, however, so I did hold that against him a little bit. A little bit more from the linebackers. Then we'll get to some defensive ends and call it a show. We'll have a extensive breakdown of all of this on Houston football, notes, things I've heard here at the Combine, walking around at dinner and things like that. So you don't want to miss out on any of that. We'll have a lot of stuff here from the Combine over the next couple of days. Jack Heiser is one of my favorite prospects in this draft. He is Notre Dame's all-time games played leader. And he was asked about that today. And he said, that's not a me achievement. That's a we achievement. Because there are so many people that have to keep me healthy, get me ready for the game every week. And so I'm the all-time games played leader, but that's not because I was really good. It's because everybody helped me be very good at what I do. And Kaiser is, he's built to be a Texan with his mentality. Just I love the way he talks about football, how important leadership is to him. I talked to him at the Senior Bowl, and I asked him, like, lead by example is, not something that Marcus Freeman, the head coach of Notre Dame, loves. He goes, yeah, because guys just follow instructions because you don't actually lead. And you have to hold your cohort to your standard, and you have to arrive at that standard as well. And I like the way he has that conversation. He covers at the linebacker spot well. He was the NCAA's leading tackler this year. And then when I asked him, I gotta give you a full screen view because you can kind of see. I asked him, hey, Jack, have you talked to the Texans while you're here? And he looked at me, and I think he recognized me. Maybe I'm giving myself too much credit, but he looked at me and he got a big smile on his face, and he goes, "Yeah, I have. We'll see." And I was like, "Ooh!" But this guy, hearing him talk about football and his approach, the ability to cover at the linebacker spot, not the biggest guy, but not afraid to stick his nose in there. This guy just screams member of the Houston Texans. And this feels like a 4th round pick, maybe a little bit later if the testing's not off the charts for him. But I really like Jack Kaiser as an option for the Texans. It feels like it'd be a really fun fit, and he has met with the Houston Texans. Get to some defensive ends real quick. Barron Sorrell, Texas. He talked about the Senior Bowl. He's like, yep, I went to the Senior Bowl, wanted to dominate, did that. Coming to the Combine to dominate, going to do that. It's like, okay, Barrett Sorrell. Okay, Barrett Sorrell is one of the standouts at the Senior Bowl as well. got announced as, I think it was by his teammates, as one of the Senior Bowl best defensive linemen, and I liked his vibe, just very relaxed. I can do this. Stopping the run is a mentality. You got to have that mentality. I have that mentality. I loved his vibe. Has met with the Texans. Let me double check my notes to make sure I don't put my foot in my mouth or put Baron Sorrell's foot in his mouth. Yes, he has met with the Texans. And pass rusher, obviously, what you think about when you think about defensive ends. But his talk about how you handle the run game was something that jumped out to me. Like, okay, you got to have a mentality. That screams D'Amico Ryans too. So, I liked his mood. Feels like he'd be a fun defensive end add to that room. You got Will Anderson, who's just like jacked up on game day. If they ain't Houston, F them. Like, you got that. And then it seems like Baron Sorrell just kind of walks in, pops his neck a couple times, and then he's ready to just kind of get after guys. So I liked what Sorrell brought to the table. Landon Jackson from Arkansas, formerly at LSU, ended up at Arkansas. He's done a tremendous job transforming his body. He's added a lot of weight over his time at Arkansas with the Hogs. He is power. And I can't figure out the range. Like, somebody mentioned him as a late first rounder. I don't buy it. Probably a second rounder, maybe a third rounder. If he's in the third round, I'd take it just from a project perspective, because he has put tremendous weight on and added to his ability to rush the passer from the defensive end spot. It doesn't really show here, but he looks enormous in pads, and he has the strength to match it as well. He's a fun prospect. I believe he's going to work out pretty well. And the cool thing I liked about Landon Jackson, he has a viral video out there of him, like, I think he's 15 years old, doing like some bag drill as a defensive end. He doesn't look athletic. He doesn't look impressive. He ended up as one of the top recruits in the nation. And then he ended up as a successful defensive end for the Arkansas Razorbacks and had a really good performance at the Senior Bowl as well. So Landon Jackson, keeping my eye on him. Didn't get to ask him if he met with the Texans. He feels like the type of guy that could be on the Texans defensive end rotation for a few years. If you got him in the third round, if you added a day 2 pick and you wanted to add him, he was intriguing. So Mike Green, Marshall defensive end, 17 sacks this season. He said, you want to worry about my competition? That's a you thing. I can put it on tape. Mike Green kicked people's ass at the Senior Bowl. He blew over one of the top tackles that was playing guard there at the Senior Bowl, just blew right past him, went viral a couple weeks ago. Mike Green, really talented player. The athleticism should be incredible. Mike Green revealed, or I guess explained, I don't know exactly how the conversation happened, but Mike Green explained why he left Virginia. So he was at Virginia and then transferred to Marshall after his first year at Virginia. Mike Green got accused of sexual assault twice. He's not ever been interviewed by a police officer about this. He's never been interviewed about the charges, or excuse me, the accusations. He's never been interviewed about the accusations. I am very interested that he was open to talk about this in this setting, but I'm also very interested to know maybe what an NFL team might think about something like that. It's not one, it's two. It caused him to leave a school and transfer to another school, but he's also never been interviewed. There's never been any sort of follow-up or anything. And if I'm understanding correctly, he signed a zero tolerance agreement with Virginia. Once the accusation happens, that's part of him having to transfer. I don't know. The workouts should be interesting. There's a chance that it's not actually as good as 17 sacks because he is a super freak and he played at Marshall. But this is a player that I'm very intrigued to see how the draft process hashes that out. Shamar Stewart, oh man, confidence oozes from this guy. And for a guy that statistically 1.5 sacks for 3 straight seasons in the SEC, Shamar Stewart had a tremendous amount of confidence. And he said, look, sometimes the scheme dictated that I'd be a good teammate, and I didn't go chase sacks. But I know that I have sacks that I needed to convert. I know there are plays that I left out there on the field. I've got to be better. I've got to be a more dominant player, but I can show you how dominant I've been. I've got that out there on my tape. I loved the confidence that he brought to the table when he was at the combine here today. He should work out. Don't think it's out of the question that he's going to be a top 10 pick. If he's there at 25, it may be a very, 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 very tough pass for the Houston Texans, because this is absolutely the type of player that DeMeco Ryans draws out every single bit of his talent and turns him into just a monster. Maybe very hard for them to pass on him. Let's finish it up here with my favorite conversation of the day. Boston College defensive end Donovan Ezeraku. Ezeraku was at the Senior Bowl, had some really nice moments at the Senior Bowl, and then today was talking about his time at Boston College. And he's like, yeah, I finished up at Boston College, and as a senior, I got done, and as I was wrapping up, kind of finishing up being at the school, all the freshmen and sophomores came up to me and they said, thank you. And I was like, thank you for what? He's like, they said, thank you because I meant so much to them as like setting an example for them and helping them get settled at BC and become members of the team and get comfortable with what they were bringing to the table. And I thought that was a really cool thing for him to share amongst like what his favorite parts of his time at BC were. So I thought that was a really interesting little bit from him. And then his comment about the Houston Texans meeting that he had was incredible. It was so good. And he said he had a formal meeting with the Houston Texans, talked a lot of football with DeMeco Ryans. And this was the quote that I loved. He says, sometimes you wish some meetings could last just a little bit longer. And I was like, oh, man. He loved sitting there chopping it up with DeMeco Ryans, Donovan Ezeraku from Boston College. And I would love to find out, and maybe I'll keep doing the digging to find out. This feels like the type of guy that could get a 30 visit that the Texans could maybe fall in love with. DeMeco Ryans talked about that connection that he has with a guy right when he gets in the room to talk with him, to talk football with him. This feels like the type of guy that could earn that from DeMeco Ryans. Sometimes you just wish meetings could last a little longer. He also dropped an iron sharpens iron at one point, which I thought was also very Houston Texans of him. So Donovan Ezeraku, really interesting prospect, probably not as physically gifted, talented as some of these other defensive ends. He'll have to work out well. There has to be some projection on what he can do. But the Senior Bowl and a good workout here at the Combine, maybe gets a couple extra eyeballs on what he put together at Boston College. And he's an intriguing player. And he loved talking to the Houston Texans. And I love talking Houston Texans football with you. Couple of questions quickly. David White says, the LA Rams have given Jonah Williams. So actually it's going to be Jonah Jackson. The reporter messed it up. It's Jonah Jackson. Jonah Jackson, permission to seek a trade. What do you think, Cody? Hurt last year, kind of expensive, probably better options. I'd say no. Dime, good to see you. Appreciate you for the congratulations on 10K. J-Tom Reactions, thank you for jumping in. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Thank you, Jake Hasman, for the super chat. And a couple quick things. Check out Prize Picks in the link in the entry down below. Last week for the Prize Picks, play 5, get 50. Don't want to miss out on that. Play 5, get 50 with Prize Picks. Check that out in the link in the description down below. Houston football, super detailed breakdown of a lot of these guys, a little bit more on their stats. We'll have tight ends and some defensive backs tomorrow, and running backs and wide receivers on Friday. So we'll do something similar to this. We'll put the player up. We'll talk a little bit about them, conversation I had with them. Landry Locker is going to be here. He'll be doing stuff at the locker room. He's got a video coming up here in a few moments here on YouTube as well that you don't want to miss out. So appreciate everybody watching the video. I really hope you enjoy them because I love doing it. And I love talking about this draft. It's one of my favorite things every single year. So thank you, everybody. Your support here makes this possible. You supporting me makes it possible for me to come to the NFL Combine, talk to these players, find out if they're going to be future members of the Houston Texans, and really start to build the database on guys who are going to help the Texans hopefully one day raise the Lombardi. That's what we all want, right? That's what we all want. So thank you, everybody, for watching. Check out Prize Picks. Link in the description down below. Play your first 5. Get $50 when you sign up with my code Stoots, STOOTS. The link will autofill the code. Check out the locker room in mere moments here on YouTube. Check out SNL from earlier today. Talked about Nick Caserio, what he had to say today. SNL yesterday was about D'Amico Ryans. I talked about D'Amico Ryans yesterday. Man, this is great. This is great. And I love this. And I love y'all. And I love talking football. And I really appreciate it. And I hope my gratitude never goes unsaid. Thank you so much. We end the live streams the same way each and every time. I want you to eat good. I want you to sleep good. I want you to be good. We'll talk Texans again soon. Thanks for watching, everybody.